Hey, welcome to Marriage Monthly. We are Gabe and Melissa Kolstad, and we love to build healthy, lifelong marriages. That's what we're passionate about.
Very.
We are excited that you're joining us for this monthly installment of hopefully inspiration, ideas, and fun that will help build your marriage. And so we're going to jump into today's episode. Here we go. We are here to jumpstart your marriage. You know, have you ever been like in the car that cold morning? You stick the key in there, you turn it, and it goes. We've done that. I've done that way too many times. And what happens is if you don't pay attention to the battery going down, you don't address the issue, you're going to end up stranded for sure. And the same thing goes with marriage. You know, COVID has been tough on marriages. A lot of marriages have struggled to recover. And as a result, there's a number of issues that are struggling in marriage, and we're just going to get right into it. Melissa's going to kick us off with number one.
Yeah, I think one of the things that suffered during COVID was creativity in a relationship.
Yeah.
And like even more than that is like an effort, like just make an effort. And I think because things were closed down and you couldn't really do much, people just gave up. They're like, I'm going to quit trying because you have to get too creative during this time. We did a date right during COVID when everything was shut down where we put a table in the back of a truck and Gabe put a tablecloth over this table and went inside and got us cheesecakes and came out. And
that was at the Cheesecake Factory.
That was at the Cheesecake
Factory. But you
Factory.
couldn't eat inside.
So we were in the parking lot.
Yes, that's right.
At the Cheesecake Factory. And he lit candles and we sat there outside eating cheesecake in the back of a truck with candles and a tablecloth. That was pretty creative.
That was fun.
But most people did not do that during COVID, and they let it slide. And guess what? It's been over 2 years, and your relationship has really, really suffered. Revelation 2:5 says, do what you did at first. And I know that they're talking like about God and to a church, but there's a principle there that I think is really important. I mean, what did you do at first? What did you do to have fun together when you first got together? Because I know you did fun stuff together because there's a reason you got married.
Yeah.
And it had to mean that you had some compatibility and enjoyed some memories together. So why did we let that just die? And why do we do that? Even not COVID, there's been, there's other ways we let it die as well. I mean, stuff gets in the way. So what'd you do for fun? What are some memorable places you have been together that made you feel close? Go on an overnight date. Get in the car together and drive to the beach because that's a great talk time. Whatever brought you together in the beginning, I think is what kind of keeps you together. So make an effort and get creative. I mean, even yesterday, okay, we're getting ready to go on a trip. And so yesterday was pretty much our last day together before we're with a bunch of people for an entire month.
Yeah.
so we're like, let's do it good. So we decided to go out to Benjamin, Washington, and it's just out in the gorge, and it's absolutely beautiful out there across from Hood River. It's such a pretty place. But we found this place called the Society Hotel, and so it has like a hot soak and a warm soak and a cold plunge.
Ice cold soak.
And Gabe did the cold plunge and went all the way. That was good.
Thanks.
High five for that. That was
fun.
awesome. I did not do that, but but it was really cool, and it had like a sauna, and then you had a cool coffee shop inside, and it was just a really cool place. We went out there, and it was like an hour and a half away. Then we went over across the water and had some pizza, and then grabbed some ice cream on the way home, and just made a fun day of memories together.
High calorie.
It was
day.
cheat day though, so it's all good. It's all good. Actually, I had like 5 bites of a cake today, so maybe today's cheat day too.
Okay.
I don't know. Anyways, but yeah, I mean, make an effort, get creative, don't let it slide. It is one thing that has seriously suffered in relationships during COVID. Let's not make any more excuses.
Well, but I think it's so hard because you're right. I mean, it's almost like we're all exhausted from being like, oh my gosh, what new creative thing could we do with limitations? And in some ways, we're still acting like all the limitations are there, but they're not there.
No.
Yeah.
No.
So it's kind of like got to
So now
snap out of it.
it's just an excuse to me.
Yeah,
and you're just being
into
lazy.
the new.
Don't be lazy.
Okay, we won't.
Number 2,
one of the things that suffered is community. So not just creativity, but community.
Absolutely.
And wow, is it important that we don't try to do marriage alone. I get it that, you've got to create your own boundaries and be your own unit as a couple when you get married. But the trouble is sometimes people take that to the very extreme. You've watched them, people who've gotten married and now they've unfriended all their friends. They never talk to anybody anymore. It's just them.
Yeah.
And if there was anything that ever accelerated that, it was COVID, where we were stuck at home. And whether you have kids or you don't have kids, you're sort of now in just your own world. It was great for the first week, right? Because you finally felt like you had time to talk to each other and all that stuff. But after 7 days of being stuck in the house together, and you don't have outside influence, some of you got connected to a group online and those kinds of things. That was a saving grace during COVID because it still puts you in contact with other couples. And I'm convinced that community matters because it offers you a couple of unique things. The Bible says this. It says in Hebrews chapter 10, it says, don't neglect the assembling of yourselves together. Right. And that's a real important piece of being somebody who's a follower of Jesus. If you're in a faith community, the thing that makes it special is that it's a community. Faith all by yourself is not really anything special because it doesn't last. And that's a weird thing. It's kind of like if you light a match and you just hold it there for a little bit, what's going to happen to that match? It is going to go out. But if you use that match to light something else, it becomes this roaring fire. And that is what even our marriages are intended to do. Of course, again, we got to have appropriate boundaries and alone time and all those things. But if we're trying to do marriage without community, we end up flaming out. There's a few things that community give you that you cannot get in isolation. One of those things is perspective. And I have just watched so many couples during this last couple of years struggle because they look at their problems up close and they become so big. And if you're not sitting in a room with somebody or even in a Zoom room with somebody, hearing about what they're going through, sometimes you think your problems are the only problems in the world.
Right.
All of a sudden, the argument you had last night, that's the straw that broke the camel's back, and you got to walk away from this marriage because you argued last night. But if you sat with somebody who's going through cancer, and you realized, wow, there's bigger problems in the world, and we should be grateful, for what God has given us, and we should work hard to maintain unity. Or you sit with somebody who's killing it in their marriage, and you're like, we want that.
Yeah.
Perspective comes from community. And so this is something that we can all work toward and go find another couple of like mind that is going to be healthy and, is going to be positive for you, can be a good example for you, and make sure that you're regularly interacting, whether that be inviting them out on a double date or getting together for a Bible study or going to a movie together, something where you can get around other couples. The second thing that has value in community is encouragement, just straight up encouragement, where somebody is saying to you, you can make it.
So good.
You can do it. We've been through this. It's not the end of the world. Here's a couple ideas. Man, that encouragement is so important and can keep you just going. So get in community. Support. You ever, when you're raising your kids, if you have little kids, there's those days you're like, we're about to go crazy.
Yeah.
We just need a place we can drop the kids off for an hour and a half so we don't go crazy. And, being in community can offer you that opportunity to share that child care and all those things that make that so
go to a park
important.
Together, right? Where it's like the kids can play and you can have adult talk.
Yeah, totally.
Community matters.
And the last thing, I think community gives you this opportunity to actually make a difference in somebody else's life.
Yeah.
Because sometimes when you're at a strong point, and you go, you know what? We could probably actually help these people out with their issue right now. We could offer some childcare. Maybe we could offer a meal when they're in the hospital. We could actually be a support to them. It gives you opportunity to express something that God has put inside of you. And so I think that's why the Bible makes it so clear. Community is essential.
Yeah.
And when it comes to marriage, we're just watching, the truth in action right now is that those who've built community during COVID are strong. Those who've neglected community during COVID, they're really struggling to bounce back. And so you can do this and don't wait.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree completely. Another thing that suffered to me was appreciation. I think we just started taking each other for granted.
Yeah.
Because, it was just a frustrating time. And so you start to feel negative and be negative and it's not good. So people were frustrated with each other and they stopped serving each other and stopped helping each other and just stopped caring. So for me, I love Gabe. Everybody knows that. If you've watched these podcasts, I think he's cool. He's always up for an adventure. He's creative, wise, fun, smart, leads and provides well, loves and pursues me passionately. We do have a lot of fun together.
Yeah.
And that's probably one of our core things.
It
and
is.
when we're not having
It's one of
fun
our
together,
values, yeah.
It's definitely a value because when we don't, we're like frustrated. So but we have a lot of fun together. But what do you love about your spouse? You should be able to rattle off what you love about
Thank
that
you for
person.
doing that. That was nice.
Well, you're the bomb. What, you got some for me? No, I'm just
Oh,
kidding.
yeah, absolutely.
No, I'm kidding. Please don't.
For later.
What do you love about your spouse? What needs a jump start? I mean, we need to start our minds a lot of times to remember what we liked about each other. Because a lot of times, and we've talked about this before about the pie, where there's like 8 slices and 7 slices are just really great. Like, I love 7 things about you, but that 8th one's driving me crazy. And that's the big one. It's like, you can't stop thinking about it. That's the one that annoys you. And really, we need to jumpstart our minds about how to be positive with our spouse. Affirm our spouse. Appreciate our spouse. I think that's so, so important. Do they know that you appreciate their cooking, their cleaning, their work effort, how they parent, their organizational skills, their discipline, their leadership? Tell them that.
Yeah.
Let them know, because they don't know and they can't read your mind. The more they know you appreciate them, the more comfortable and safe they feel. The more they will open up and appreciate you back.
Oh,
right?
so true.
Yeah, because you just can't help it. If you're pouring into me, I just got to pour back into you. I mean, it's how it goes. So Gabe is really good at this. If I clean the house, he'll walk in and be like, babe, it smells so good in here. Like every time. It's cute and I appreciate it. So, I mean, tell them. Also, another thing about appreciation is show them that you appreciate them. Clean up after yourself once in a while. I know I hang out with a lot of chicks, so I know that it drives them crazy when their husband doesn't, do this or that, and it becomes a big deal. And I'm like, don't make it a bigger deal than it needs to be, but show them. Clean up after yourself. Bring them flowers. Better yet, chocolate, because that's more of my favorite.
Chocolate flowers.
Chocolate flowers. Take them out to dinner. I mean, show them you appreciate them. Send a sexy text. Don't assume that they feel appreciated.
Did you say send a sexy text?
I did.
Wow.
I did. I send sexy texts. What do you mean? Don't assume they feel appreciated. Tell them and show them. The sexiest book in the Bible is Song of Songs, right? Mm-hmm. So Song of Songs 7, 6, and 7 says, how beautiful are you? How pleasing, my love, full of delights. Then he talks about her body and her boobs. So it gets pretty sexy after that. So I'm going to encourage you to read Song of Songs 7 on your own. But it's
people are going
definitely
to start texting the Bible to each other.
Yeah, just do. Solomon was a sexy guy, and he tells his lady and shows her that he appreciates her and he thinks she's sexy. So that's important. So appreciation. It's a huge one to me. So number 4.
Yeah, and I just on that note of appreciation, one of the things that we've noticed so much is that you can appreciate your spouse to their face. But honestly, if you do it behind their back, sometimes it's even more powerful. They call that third-party praise.
Yeah.
Like, let's say you are on a double date with another couple, and you're talking to the other person. Like, if I'm the guy, I'm talking to the guy, and I'm just bragging about my wife, and she's sitting across the booth listening to this. If she hears me talking positive about her to somebody else, that's even more powerful sometimes than me saying it to her directly, because what you say about your spouse to other people really, really matters.
Yeah, it doesn't feel as forced or maybe fake, because we're so hard on ourselves.
Yeah.
So we're like, I'm not really what you just said.
And obviously we want to be genuine about it, but
Absolutely.
I mean, the point is that talk them up, not just to their face, but also, behind their back.
That's good.
Yeah, so appreciation. And then the last one that we've noticed is really suffering right now. And, this is not meant to be a doomsday thing at all, but it's kind of a checklist to go like, wow, if we need a jumpstart in one of these areas, let's do it.
Yeah.
Because, hey, guess what? COVID's over. And we don't want our marriage to stay in that place of, a pandemic. We want our marriage to thrive.
There you go.
So the last one is learning. And that is that idea that we go like, hey, we're going to learn how to have the best possible marriage. We're going to apply ourselves to this lifelong goal of building a beautiful marriage. I mean, marriage, after all, is God's best picture of what his love for us looks like. So it's a calling. I'm convinced it's a sacred calling that God has given us a responsibility and a stewardship of a relationship so that we can best mirror what his perfect love looks like. Now, we're never going to do that perfectly, but we can get close. We can start to see how it can be a consistent part of our life to have what we would consider God's love at work between us. God's love is agape love, and that means it's self-sacrificing, unselfish love. And so when we climb out of the erotic love phase, out of the friendship love phase, out of the kind of self-centered love phase to selfless love, there's some beautiful things that happen, but there's a lot of learning that it requires to get there. One of the things that we've consistently done is we've read books on marriage, and we've got so many favorites. If you just go back and listen to some of our podcast episodes here, you're going to hear lots of the favorites. At the top of the list would be Pillow Talk by Les and Leslie Parrott. A little tiny book that is so good.
It's so good.
I mean, that's such a good one. His Needs, Her Needs, so good. 5 Love Languages, so good.
Spaghetti Waffles.
Spaghetti. Men are like spaghetti. Men are like waffles. Women are like spaghetti.
Yes.
Such a good book.
So good.
Love and Respect. I mean, all these really great books that we've read, we've studied, we've read again.
We've taught.
Yeah. We wrote one called You're My Favorite, but
That's right.
we've really worked hard, honestly, to be students of love, students of marriage, students of each other.
That's right.
And I think that students of each other sometimes gets really overlooked. You can learn all the marriage principles you want, but if you haven't actually learned who that is, the interesting thing that we've found out is that we change. And it's so funny that you go, oh, I know everything about her. We've been married for going on 27 years this year. You'd think, oh, we know everything about each other. And then she goes and changes on me. Just yesterday, she's eating olives on a salad. She's eating a pizza that had stuff on it she would have never eaten 5 years ago, 10 years
growing.
ago. I know. She's growing as a person. Our tastes change. Things change. And we really feel like being a student of your spouse is so important. The Bible says in Proverbs 5:18, it says, let your wife be a fountain of blessing for you. And I think of that like, switch the words around a little bit. Let your husband be a fountain of blessing for you. I think the idea would be a fountain is always producing. And sometimes we put that on them and we go like, well, that's your problem. You shut the faucet off. But the thing is that somebody's got to be looking for that, looking for the freshness, looking for it's a new day, it's a new week, it's a new season,
That's right.
And we got to go through seasons. I mean, Melissa and I, we're going through a season of almost empty nesting. We've got one child left at home. And there's been, you might look at that if you 3 kids and you're like, oh my gosh, we're almost free. There is, of course, some of those things to it, but there's also the grief of change that we go through.
I loved being a mom.
And we learn about each other through that. We learn how hard it's been for us to release, our kids that are now adults and not see them as often and not talk to them as often and not control them as much and all that stuff.
Are you trying to make me cry?
No, no. But it's a season, and we're learning about each other still, and we're learning how do we support each other in that. this idea that we'd be lifelong students of marriage, of love, and of each other.
That's good.
I think those are things that we've got to commit to. So, maybe that's something you could go. We're going to jumpstart that part of our life. We're going to get one of those books. We're going to listen to these podcasts. We're going to ask each other the questions, be curious about each other on the day to day, and so that we can still stay in love.
And you have to be so intentional, don't you think?
Yeah.
Like it doesn't naturally happen to be a student of each other or to pick up a marriage book or to listen to a podcast.
Oh, it's completely backwards of human nature. Yeah.
But once you do it kind of brings things up in your mind and you can start those conversations so much easier. I was listening to a podcast or I watched this YouTube video, right? Just so much better. Yeah.
Yeah. I think you've got a challenge for us.
I do. I actually was thinking about the book thing we were talking about. There's a book called The Love Dare. And there's this thing called the Love Dare Challenge. Now, there was several years ago, there's a movie that came out called Fireproof Your Marriage. And it was really, really good. And the whole premise of the movie was that this couple was having massive marital issues. They were very far apart from each other, and they didn't know how to get back together on the same page, and they didn't really want to. And so there came this point where the husband was like, I've got to fix this because this is my core relationship, so I have to fix this. So he decides to go first, and he starts doing things around the house. He throws away his computer because he had a porn problem. He started doing all these actions to show his love and respect for his wife and the commitment of their marriage. He brings her flowers one day, and she's like, what are you doing? Because she was still so bitter and so mad, but he just kept doing it and kept just pouring into her affirmation. You're beautiful. You're doing a great job. And she was very skeptical. But after like a little while, she started warming up saying, wow, he's changed. Like something's happening in him. And she started to accept it. And I don't want to ruin the movie, but it gets good. But anyways, so there's a couple things I want to say about that is make a decision to go first. Someone's got to break the cycle of toxic or crazy, right? Someone's got to break that. Someone's got to go first and say, this matters, and I'm going to do something about it. So this is the Love Dare Challenge. So show your love and concern. Ease their burdens. Spoil them. Help them. talk to them, listen to them, serve them, do better, make better choices, get rid of addictions or choices that are putting a wedge in your relationship. That needs to go. Gabe and I have this thing that we always say, and it drives some people crazy, but it matters to us. Act your way into feeling. Mm-hmm. And I know that can sound fake, but it really works. And so sometimes our feelings are so unpredictable, and we should not run on our feelings. They're not good. And so acting your way into feeling like, I'm going to love Gabe even though he left his socks on the ground this morning and I don't like it. You didn't really. I'm just kidding. Good. But it's one of those things where it's like, those can be like explosive things, but in a toxic relationship. But in a healthy relationship, you're like, okay, I'm not going to pick him up because that's gross, but he can do them later tonight. But but it's one of those things where it's like, some days you just don't feel like loving someone and you don't feel like pouring into your spouse. You're just kind of in a funk or grumpy or selfish or whatever it is, or you're tired. And there comes a point where you just have to act your way into feeling, especially even sexual sometimes, especially for girls. You don't feel like it all the time. I think guys like generally feel like it, but girls are sometimes, girls are kind of like, I'm tired. I had a hard day. We are slower at warming up to sex. And so sometimes we're like, you got to act your way into feeling. Don't let your man go without just because you have a chip on your shoulder or you're too tired all the time. Sex has to happen in a relationship, ladies and guys, if that's your problem too, but it needs to happen. So sometimes you just got to act your way into feeling. It's really important. God wants you to be intimate with your spouse. It needs to happen, because if you don't, and scripture says the devil will get a foothold in your relationship. And that is a lot of times when divorce happens. Sleep together in a bed every night. Every night. Don't not sleep together. Don't have one person here and you here. That puts such a wedge in a relationship. I have watched it happen dozens of times, and it has ruined relationships and caused divorce. So sleep together and actually have sex together as well. So those are a couple things.
Those are wise words, don't you guys think?
You love those, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. But acting and feeling, a lot of times it will take time, like in the movie with the gal, but God wants you to stay married. He wants you to serve each other. He wants you to be happy in this relationship. Marriage is a gift from God. And if you are in it, then win it. Be together. Like make it matter. Put an effort into it. Don't stop making it a priority. Start today and jumpstart your marriage. A marriage making an effort is always healthier than a marriage waiting for something to change. It will not change. You have to change.
Wow, that's really good and so true. Well, we dare you in that sense to take action and do something. I've got a little homework assignment for you.
All right.
If you're ready to take the dare. This is going to be doable. And the homework is this, is plan 2 date nights. 2 date nights.
All right.
And that means she plans one and he plans one.
I like that.
All right. So I promise that we'll also take this challenge. And that means you need to find a time. You need to find a place. You need to find an activity. You need to find childcare if that's appropriate. And you need to plan the experience. And, so go for it. Like over the next month, plan 2 dates. Some of you might be like, we can't do 2 in a month. We do, 1 a month, or we do 1 every 6 months. Let's kick it into high gear. Let's jumpstart it. Let's do 2 in a month. Can you imagine 2 date nights in 1 month?
Especially if you're struggling.
Yes, you need it.
Make the extra effort.
You need it.
You need it.
Absolutely. So he gets to do 1, she gets to do 1, and don't complain about what they pick. Just go with it. It's going to be fun. You're going to love it. Let's jumpstart our marriages. Thanks so much for joining us for today's episode of Marriage Monthly. We want to ask you if you would subscribe to this podcast and share it with 3 people that you know that might also enjoy this content, and it might help build their marriage. We are passionate about building healthy, lifelong marriages, and we want to thank you for being part of this podcast.